Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Korra book review. This one is going to be for Legend of Korra and Avatar's Chronicle, the new book from Inside Editions. I believe the official release date is August 6th, but my copy arrived early, so I'm able to give you guys an early review and see if this book is actually worth getting. So I'm going to start off here with some sort of initial impressions, kind of giving you that, do I recommend it or not, the kind of general, is it good, is it bad, and then after that we'll get into an in-depth look at the book. I'll get behind the camera and actually show off the book a lot. So just to start off with, here's the cover. Very nice new piece of art for Korra, her book 4 design. I think it looks really nice. And so on. There is the spine, Legend of Korra and Avatar's Chronicle, Robinson, that is the obviously surname of the author. And then on the back it just gives you a sense of some of the sort of pullouts that you get from this book, because that's what it is. It's like the Avatar Legacy book. You get some of these kind of postcardy type stuff, leaflet type stuff, and then it's just a description of what the book is. So yeah, what is this book? It's a very similar book to the previously released Avatar Legacy, just with a different premise. The premise of this book was obviously that it was Aang creating this sort of scrapbooks, journal style thing to give to his son Tenzin. This one is Tenzin asking Korra to make a journal scrapbook to chronicle her own journey, and in that sense they end up being somewhat similar books by the end, in terms of it mainly just being kind of recap, data book style content. You're not really getting anything inherently new here, and so most of the book, I think the recommendation of the book is kind of just on the general presentation of it, in that it does feature new art, and you know, it's a nice hardcover book, nice size. It has those little pull-out sections, so in that sense, like the main draw of the book is just that it's kind of presented quite well with its new visuals and so on. But the content itself, the writing, while I think good in terms of every time they have to write a letter for a new character, it feels in the voice of that character and fits them. The lack of new information, I think, just really brings this book down to the point where I can't really just give this a giant recommendation that like every Avatar fan should pick this up. Whereas, say, Rise of Kyoshi, the last piece of merchandise that was released, the Rise of Kyoshi novel, that was a book where just immediately I had no problem saying, I think every Avatar fan should read this book. That's how good it is. This book, unfortunately, is more like, if you're a collector and have Avatar Legacy, you should probably get it to add to your collection. If you like the look of some of the art in this book, you should maybe get it. If you like the pull-out little pieces here and there, then maybe get it. But if you are just someone who picks up the stuff that is the proper new content, you probably don't really need to get this book. There's probably not enough here for you. And considering the book is on the sort of pricier end of things, in that, like, I think it was like 22-ish euro, I think, is what I paid for this. It's a little bit pricey for what it is, considering like it's only 64 pages, and now, like I said, it's a hardcover. You get the pullouts, the pages, like it's the materials, I suppose, of the book are nice, and it's printed very nicely. But it's still a bit much considering what you actually get in it, and that would be really where I stand on it, in the sense that I think both of these books have very similar recommendations, in the sense of they are just two different versions of the same book. I think Legacy is probably the one more worth getting, because the premise of it is a bit more interesting, in that it is like what middle-aged Aang talking to Tenzin. So you get like the letter from Katara to Tenzin, which is actually a really nice page in the book, and I think it covers a little bit more ground. Whereas the way this one, and the premise is like, this is Korra writing this book in like early-ish Turf Wars type era, so it's just a little bit after the end of the series, so there's really no reflection time on this. This is just Korra's like recent history to her. There's not a lot of kind of nostalgia type thing, because it's literally just happened, and in that sense I think the sort of premise of this book struggles a little bit, because it's just like, these people that she's around, she's having to get them to write letters to her, even though she's in the same vicinity as her. And the only reason you can sort of put that together is just that, like, she needs to make this scrapbook because Tenzin asked her to. And it all just feels a little weird. And I'd ultimately say that is probably one of the biggest criticisms, and it's one of the most clear-cut examples of why this book was always going to be limited from the start, is where it's set. And in the preview pages especially, making it very clear. The reason we know where it says is because they mention multiple times that Bolin is a police officer. He's part of the Republic City Police Force. We know that is only the case for the Turf Wars series, and that by the end of Turf Wars, he has stepped down as going into Ruins of the Empire and stuff like that. Bolin is no longer part of the police force. He's moved on to something different. And so that sets this book very clearly in the era of basically the content that was out at the time that this book was being made, really telling you that there was pretty much no insight from like any of the creators to give new content for this book. And so it just feels like they put this thing together. It's nicely presented for what it is, but there's just no new content. The writers could only do so much with nothing new to say, and I think that's always just a limiting factor with this book. And it's going to be the same with the Legacy of the Fire Nation book that's coming out next. That is Iroh writing a similar journal to Zuko, but being Fire Nation focused. That will have to have at least a little bit of new information. The preview pages, I think, already give us some of that. But how is that going to tackle pages on like Liu Ten and stuff like that? How is it going to tell us anything about Liu Ten when there isn't all that much information on him? Like that's a book where it's just going to be very telling what they can and can't do, given that the premise of that book is Iroh writing the story. He's the narrator of that journal. How's that going to be? So I don't know. I definitely have frustrations with these, but like I say, the original illustrations by Sora Medina, who's the artist throughout this book, excellent. I think that is the highlight of this book by a mile. Stuff like the cover really, really shows that. But yeah, I think that's all I want to say here before I just get behind the camera now to show you guys, and that it's unfortunate. I think the timing of this coming out just after Kyoshi is pretty weak, just because it really highlights that it doesn't have a lot to say. But if you like this type of book, you'll probably get something out of it. And there's a few nice little fun moments throughout the letters and stuff like that back and forth, but I'll get into them when we show you the book. So yeah, I'm just going to get behind the camera now and we'll focus in on what's inside the book. Okay, so like I said, here's the cover, pretty nice. You get a better sense of like the pictures, the images on the cover, they're kind of shiny compared to the kind of background and stuff like that. So you can see the quality of it. Back cover, like I said, this shows you sort of the pull-out little bits and pieces. I definitely think the pull-outs and stuff like that are much better in Avatar Legacy. They just feel a little weak here, like they didn't have many ideas here, and a lot of them just... there's not as much of like an allure for this stuff as there was like the wanted poster and that sort of stuff from the previous book. It felt like those are cool things that I really want to have, whereas these feel like, okay, like the Bolin thing is kind of nice, the Republic City Police Officer sort of badge is kind of nice, but the rest of the stuff isn't so great. But anyway, let's get into this. So inner cover here, pretty nice Republic City shot in the kind of old-time paper kind of colors. Back kind of inner cover is Tree of Time area, the Spirit World, which I love this area, so I like that they use this. But yeah, initial pages are just, your standard title page, element symbols. There's the really nice hero kind of main shot of Korra. Again, original illustrations by Sora Medina. The text in the book is going to be by Andrea Robinson. And again, on the creators, I think they do a good job with what they were tasked with here. It's just that everything that they were doing was sort of limited by the fact that this book only had a very specific scope and they didn't have the new content to work off. But like I said, the art is good. The writing, I think, it feels very in character. There's just no new content to go off, so there's only so good it can be. Again, nice image, Korra Tenzin there. This introduction is basically just a page that kind of gets across the whole book. It she touches on the villain of each of the 4 books here and basically says, this is what I'm going to talk about in this book. I'm going to be going through this fairly quickly. Like, these are the preview pages that we saw already. Gives you a sense for kind of what it's going to be like. The journal is meant to be this journal that has like bits of letters, pictures, scrapbook together. That's the style of this, that it is meant to be an in-universe item. Here's a page with Katara. So, the idea here is that this is Katara sending a letter back to Korra, having requested some thoughts from Katara. And, this is just, older Katara reflecting on things. Just that, she's happy that she got this letter from Korra. Now that she's older, she can reflect on the fact that, her life was sort of defined by the people that were missing up until the point that she met Aang, with like her father braved the war, her mother gone, that sort of thing. And she talks about how things kind of changed, and also a nice little moment here. Do you remember that day outside the hut when I told you that waterbending was done with slow, calm movements, and you ended up burying me in the snow? Your mother was so worried, but I knew it was only a matter of time. You've always been one who needed to forge ahead and find her own way, whether that meant following my son Tenzin to Republic City or withdrawing to recover from all you faced as the Avatar. Please give my love to my children and grandchildren. It's Katara as you expect her. So it feels in character. They try to add a little bit of new stuff in with just that little waterbending kind of incident, but that's really all there is here. Next page is again more the preview pages. We saw the page about Naga, Tonraq and Senna, ordered White Lotus. Nothing particularly new or interesting here. When I first saw the preview pages, I did criticize it for not featuring any of the backstory about how Korra found Naga, which we got in a comic. But they do actually mention it down the bottom of this page here. However, I did find Naga, and she talks about how she kind of ran away frustrated one day, and that's how it happened. So, they don't go into the full story. I probably would have liked it to have gone into here, but they don't. Southern Compound, Healing Hut again. It just describes, like, what they are. That's the Healing Hut. This is the scene in the show that happened here. There's nothing new, and they're just filling in a page with those 2 things. Here's the airbending page, but it's more, the focus is obviously the letter that Bumi sends Korra. And it's what you expect. It's him talking about how he's not going to shave his head, even though Tenzin would want him to. He talks about how he does respect Tenzin because Tenzin's trying so hard to teach him, still believing that Bumi, despite how old he is, can learn new stuff, and he feels connected to his father even more now that he has airbending and stuff like that. But that's all this is, just reflecting on the stuff that's happened on Air Temple stuff. This is what we get on these pages. Tenzin's principle of meditating. And again, it's from Korra's perspective, so you get it here. It's just like meditate some more, circular movements, the stuff you expect. Here's the first page with a pullout, and it's just Milo's become an expert airbender in 30 days or less. Words and pictures by Milo. And you can see it's just stuck on at the upper corner there. Kind of shielding off the section on the airbending gates, and then that's just a section describing in general how the layout of Air Temple Island is. Not much to really say. Here's the pro bending. I like this double page shot. It's quite nice with the crowd being the focus, and then you can see the arena here. It just describes, there's a nice interesting thing here. I realized I don't know if pro bending is going to exist in the future, given that our arena was partially destroyed. I really hope that it does, but if it doesn't, here's what you need to know. That is an interesting one in that it really does suggest the idea that the world only has one pro bending arena, which I don't think makes a ton of sense, because how do people train at pro bending to get on a team if there's only one arena? Now, you can easily, I suppose you could say, like, there's only one arena that, like, directly, like, broadcasts it and is the pro bending stuff, and everything else is just, like, training to become a pro bender. But it feels weird that the sport is so specific to just one location. But anyway, this just describes the rules and stuff like that of pro bending, this page. This page is interesting here, though. Pro bending championship. And I think the idea is just that it's meant to be a sample bracket. But the way it's filled in feels like it's referencing something, but it's nothing we've heard about before. Because if you look at the layout, so the final isn't filled in, the winner isn't filled in, but look at the semi-finalists. Future Industries Fire Ferrets versus the Bowling Buzzard Wasps, and then the Pinnacle Palace Platypus Bears against the Orchid Gardens Ostrich Horses. we've never seen that tournament where that lineup of teams happened. And especially if you go down all the way here to the bottom, we see that the White Falls Wolfbats were defeated by the Ostrich Horses to get to the finals. I don't know what tournament this is, because as far as we're aware in canon, the Fire Ferrets only participated in the Probendian Championships back in Book 1, which they lost in the finals to the Wolfbats. Then Bolin, the next year, tried to bring a new team with him as the captain and 2 other guys, and they obviously crashed out very early on because the other 2 members weren't great. That's clearly not this bracket. And then in between Book 2 and 3, in the Korra video game, there is like a charity pro bending tournament, which the Future Industries Fire Ferrets reunite together, the full team, Korra, Mako, Bolin, and they win that charity tournament, defeating the Wolfbats in the finals. But what's this? Does it suggest that the team does get back together at some point and win? It's clearly not recently, because Korra just said the arena's closed down. She doesn't know if pro bending is going to continue. So when was this? Is there a moment like that we missed where the team did get back together? I'd like to know for sure what they're talking about here. That if there is just a moment somewhere where the team could have got back together and got to the finals again at some point. Here we go. Here's the page about Mako, his letter. Again, the image, I think, is really nice. There's Bolin down here in the police car. And yeah, you get another pull out here. Mako's cool police sayings. And this is just a kind of fold down thing like that. And yeah, the first 3 here are the 3 from the show. You know, it looks like you had some car trouble. Good thing the police are here. You know, when you get to jail, tell them Mako sent you. And then the new ones are, you know, they're kind of puns and stuff like that. Once a time, there was a criminal that got caught. You're getting Una locked up. Looks like it's the highway for Iway and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. I think it's very in character. The letter from Mako is just, you know, talking about how he's busy being a police officer, especially now that Bolin's with him and stuff like that. He reflects about their days spent adventuring together, which feels weird because the setup of the book is that she's putting this together like a few weeks after Book 4, where they did get back together as a team, so it feels a bit odd. Here's the Bolin page with the sort of postcard, you know, shot of Nuktuk here with Ginger and Bolin. Visit, prove I'm not a liar. It's just referencing what Bolin says in his piece here. Fun little moment. It happens in the middle of this section here. Opal's much happier with this job too, and she likes this uniform a lot better than my old Earth Empire one, although a little bit less than my Nuktuk shorts. But moving on, so just a fun little thing about the relationship there, about what clothes Opal likes Bolin to wear. There we go, there's the page on Korra talking about Mako and Bolin. This is just a fun one for me because I almost feel like I had a hand in an error that was in the preview pages being changed. It now says, you know, how much has changed in just 4 years, and she talks about the group. Previously, it was like I think it was 6 years is what they said, and that didn't make any sense because there's no way she knew them that long, given the premise for when this book is being written and how long she knew the brothers and stuff like that. So I felt like I was one of the first people to point it out, and it did get changed when they kind of redid the preview pages, so it was kind of a fun little thing. I probably had no actual involvement in the changing of that, but you know, I pointed it out at least early on. Republic City Park, it's just a nice little thing where Korra notes that she struggles to call the park Avatar Korra Park since its name's been changed, but Tenzin is just urging her to call it that because she deserves it. There's a reason it was named after her. Yep, Central City Station, Spirit Wilds, it's just describing what they are. There's nothing really new here. The art, again, continues to be nice. Here's the Asami page, and even this, which they could have gone really heavily into, just has a few little references to Korra and Asami's relationship. You know, say over a nice romantic dinner at Fawn's Dumplings. This wouldn't have anything to do with that assignment Tenzin gave you or anything like that. I hope this is helpful to you for your book. If not, let me know tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Love, Asami. You know, again, nice image of Asami here on this page, on the scooter. And yes, she said in the letter she'd give Korra some sort of blueprints to be included here. So electrified glove, the wingsuit, which she does confirm that she was the one who invented it. That's one of those facts that I think we learned from like interviews and stuff like that around the time, but like it never was directly stated in the show. I think that was the case, but everyone thought it was, but this confirms it, so it's nice to have that as sort of canon confirmed. Mecha tanks, airships, Satomobile. Here's the page with Varric and Zhu Li. You get another pullout here with the blueprints for the Dragonbird Hummingbird suits. This page is just Korra talking about Asami and Varric and their technology advancements. There's just some fun things here in the Varric one. It says, "In wedded bliss, Varric," and he talks in the PS at the bottom here about, my wife, Julie, and stuff like that. Nothing too much to say there. Next page is the one with Jinora. Really, really like this image of Jinora here. I think the art really works well for that. It could just be the color of the sort of like, the spirits and stuff like that, but I do think it's a very, very nice, probably my favorite, my actual favorite image in the book. Just seeing, airbending master Jinora with the spirits, it really fits her character. The pullout you get here is Pema's coconut macaroons, which appears to be an actual recipe, and that they don't mention any like made up Avatar like ingredients or anything like that. It just seems to be like actual ingredients, and that like it's 6 cups of unsweetened coconut flakes, 1 tablespoon of melted coconut oil, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, half a tablespoon of vanilla. They even mention preheat oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit and give you the instructions. There's a few little things in there about like air current resistant material. If you hear a crash coming from the other room, you need to investigate. Don't let Milo in their kitchen when you're doing this and stuff like that. There's a few little things here with the Jinora section. How she talks about the spirits and wanting more people to understand the beauty of the spirit world and learn about it. How she's disappointed in Wan Shi Tong, that he didn't turn out to be particularly nice. And then I still hope to take Kai, or as my dad likes to call him, that close friend of Jinora's who is also a boy, to the spirit world. And she talks about Kai's always been so encouraging of my airbending, and he's been right with me as we work to defend the new spirit portal in Republic City. So again, that's a sort of Turf Wars reference. Spirit World section, the pullout here is a little Spirit World booklet that just has some images and a few lines of text. Kind of interesting here, just a description here. No matter how frightening they may first appear, dark spirits are not evil. Instead, they're spirits that have become so imbalanced that they're no longer able to respond to the light within them. So that's interesting. Yes, spirit bending, that's the description there. Spirit projection, dragonfly bunnies, dragon birds. Here's the Zuko page. This is kind of disappointing. Like, again, image, really, really like that image of Zuko. The letter, it really is just sort of almost like rephrasing of this exact scene that Zuko and Korra had in the show. In that it's like, oh, you met Iroh, it was fun to meet you. I've kind of followed, your journey even before we'd met. I'm jealous that you got to meet Iroh. If you ever get to meet him again, tell me what happened. And like there's no real sense of like teasing anything that like he wants to go to the spirit world or anything like that. It's just, this is one of those ones where you can really tell the writer really couldn't do all that much to present anything new, just in case they said something that could have been changed later on as like a story beat or anything like that. So this kind of comes across as relatively disappointing, even though it is a letter from Zuko. It's just very disappointing, that sort of thing. Here's a section on Wan. Again, I like that sort of journey of just like original Wan in training, kind of fully realized Avatar Wan kind of type thing. But it's just a recap of his journey along the way. There's interesting representation of Rava and Vatu, and just talking about the start of the Avatar cycle, and that Korra was the one to deal with the next harmonic convergence. Here's the Lin letter, Chief Beifong, and you get this kind of interesting little, kind of thin paper, thin cardboard metal bending metal bending police force kind of badge logo. I kind of half think, like, is it meant to be a sticker or something like that? Because it's one of those things where, like, if the books was maybe a little bit more deluxe or something like that, you'd almost think, like, could they throw in some sort of a, like, pin or, like, actual badge type thing. But it is just a little piece of kind of thin, flexible kind of cardboard. She just says, you know, that Mako, you know, there's crazy stuff happening when Mako first joined the police force, but he's actually, like, one of her valuable team members on the police force at this point in time. That's really all there is to say here. She just talks about, you know, follow the rules and stuff like that. And Korra talks about how even though she's all about the rules, you know, she can still depend on her a lot. Again, nice image of Opal here. Opal just talks about Zhao Fu, basically. There's no real details in this as such. It's just, you know, her advice is somewhat interesting in the way she phrases it. What is it? Yeah, if you're asking me to give advice to an avatar, but if I had to, I guess it would be that sometimes you need a little distance to be able to see things clearly, and that it wasn't until she sort of started doing, like, her training away from Zhao Fu that she really realized the extent to which Zhao Fu was this kind of amazing place with so much progress. Here's Korra talking about Toph, and it's about all you expect there, that Toph was very tough on her, but she sort of needed it when she came back into action. This is just a back and forth between Korra and Tenzin about the project, that, like, Tenzin wants her to cover stuff about the villains. Korra didn't really want to, but Tenzin urges her to, and she agrees to it. Here's some excerpts from, like, the letters that she was sent during her time in recovery. And then we get into the villains. So again, nice image of Amon, but the description is basically just a recap of her dealings with Amon. There's nothing new about him. Here's the one for book 2 with Unalaq and Vatu, and again, it's just what you expect. The text, it's a fine recap, but there's nothing new here. The image is really nice. The colors, I think, really stand out here for Unavatu and Unalaq there. I think it's a really nice image, but the text, unfortunately, is very weak. There's Zahir up there, and then there's the other 3 members. And again, this is where it really stands out that, like, this is a section in a book like this where you could go into more information on Pali, Minghua, Ghazan, even Zahir. There's a lot that we actually don't know about him. But it's just a really basic just description of this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. These are the characters. It's the same with Kuvira. Even though the books right now at the moment are dealing with more of a character arc for Kuvira, it's still just recap of book 4. And that's the weakness of having this be a journal thing that's set so close to the end of the series, that there's nothing they can really say. Last page, great piece of art. This is, I think, a poster they were giving out at San Diego Comic-Con. But, you know, here it is in the actual book. It's a nice kind of team image of them kind of getting together. I assume this is probably taken at some point, like... The timing of this is so weird because, like, she comes back, they come back from the journey, their vacation in the spirit world, and that's when they find out, like, Bolin's a cop. So, like, there's basically almost, like, no time if you actually read Turf Wars where, like, all this stuff could have taken place. That's why this book just ends up feeling a little bit weird in terms of, like, this makes sense as a picture, but, like, when did they take it? Now, I think part of this book may suffer from the fact that I get the feeling this book was probably finalized in or around the time when, like, before Turf Wars Part 3 was released, is the impression I get. And so they really didn't know, I think, that Bolin was going to quit being a police officer, so they just assumed that they could maybe place it as, like, post-Turf Wars, Korra makes this journal, but post-Turf Wars, Bolin's not a cop. There's probably a little time you can slot it in, but it's not ideal. And so that's why I feel just the premise of this book was kind of weak from the start. It should have been an older Korra writing this with a little bit of extra information, but unfortunately, I think because of the way that these books are written, they really don't have any capacity to add anything new in, because I really don't get the impression Mike and Brian are at all involved in these books. So your writer here, Andrea Robinson, as good of a job as she does at getting into the character of these characters, there's nothing new to add here. And that's why I'm so at the same time worried, but there's potential for the Legacy of the Fire Nation book, in that how are you going to go into the history of the Fire Nation without giving any new information? How is Iroh going to talk about Lu Ten without telling us anything new about him? How is Lu Ten going to be talked about without having to address who Lu Ten's mother is? Those type of questions with Iroh, of just, you have to do more than just say the references that we already know about from Iroh's past. And that's what I'm worried about for the next book. This one I really didn't expect anything from, and ultimately there's basically nothing here. Like I said, if you look through this book and saw some interesting stuff, by all means, like, sure, get it. It's fairly well put together for what it is. But if you're looking for new information, there isn't anything here for you. And that's the best thing I can say about this book. I really think, given the price of it, the scope and stuff like that, I would really recommend this to collectors and the most hardcore of Avatar fans, who are probably going to get most of the merchandise anyway. If you're just picking up the new content, you probably really don't need to with this book. Just looking through the book, as I did in this video, is probably enough for most people. And you probably don't need to grab a copy of this yourself. But, it's up to you guys, of course. It's not for me to make the decision for you. If you like what you saw, by all means, grab this book. But yeah, that's been the review for An Avatar's Chronicle. In the comments, let me know if you have any questions about the book or anything like that. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.